What's up guys, SkyKevin here, and today we're doing an additional look into the details from Neon, the new community manager for Last Oasis's Season 5. Keep in mind all this info is informally taken from his responses to questions on the LO Discord, and so I don't want to hold him to anything that he has said here. It is simply speculation at this point, but I've organized it in a way that we can understand a bit more of what to expect in the coming weeks. So, let's get started. Like I said, these comments were all taken from Neon on the 12th of April 2022. They were rapid-fire answers done by Neon and spread throughout different topics. To begin, someone firstly asked, "The new vision, what could that mean? I hope it's still a survival game." To which he assures us that there will be a new vision for the game, but it will very much still include the things that we love about the survival genre, and they're mostly changing how they add content to the game. I'm not sure what he means by the addition of content, as LO devs have been slow to release content in the past, and although the new walkers and buildings always look really cool and have some neat functionality, they've always fallen short in the actual overall amount of content they release on a regular basis. This may allude to releasing more variations of what they've already had in the mix and just adding some variety to things. The next one states that they're changing grappling, stamina, and wingsuits, as well as worm tincture changes, which is something I am personally very excited about. As I've said in previous videos before, stamina and grappling definitely need a rework, not because it's not fun to Spider-Man swing between trees all day long, but because it made walkers essentially useless as a means of transportation, as well as stamina as a stat that's also pretty much useless. If they add some sort of recovery time to grappling, I think that it would add a skill-based component to trying to grapple up to the top of a mountain, instead of being able to just swing around endlessly on a building or walker, making those things much less applicable in the future. The change to worm tinctures as well is just something that needs to happen, so we don't have people running around killing players in one swing with their endgame weapons. In addition to this, he mentions griefing will change as well, hopefully as a result of the changes I just mentioned above when it comes to stamina and grappling. He goes on to say that they're looking at removing the base at which the griefer may be staying at. They have said that they're going to be doing a full rework of stone bases to eliminate that from being a safe haven for griefers, as well as further on in the posts. He then goes on to say that they want to make it easier to catch the wingsuiters and grapplers, and make it more of a skill-based system in regard to not preventing it completely. So there won't be changes to the types of objects that can be destroyed, and only to the way in which we catch the griefers, and difficulty for them to have a safe space to go back to. I will say with this, if it is still possible to stand on top of a base with a normal flint axe and destroy buildings that way, griefing will still be an issue in my opinion. Another thing he responds to is the changes to melee combat mechanics. He mentioned that there really are just changes to the numbers for weapons and armor and doing a rebalance of the calculations, which is something I completely agree with. He says melee aboard walkers will also change a lot, and the speed and armor changes will be a thing as well. This makes me think that they're going to change the weapon speed or stamina cost of attacks, so that when you make a swing, you'll have to commit to that attack, and possibly when you block, commit to that direction. I don't believe they would totally get rid of feints altogether, but I like the fact that they're making the on-walker fights a priority and making it less about just grappling away and bandaging. Kicking changes are also something that he said might be added as a real tangible stun effect as well. He also mentions that when it comes to weapons and armor, they want to have a variety of biome-related differences between the gear. This is something they've alluded to in the past with things like Triple Stitch needing to be collected with pearls from the medium maps, or the lava gear obviously from the lava maps. I think this is a great idea to balance things and give specific biomes a type of gear that works best in that area. I hope for whatever reason they can always avoid having a lot of players all living in one specific biome, because that's where the meta dictates it to have the best and strongest gear. Instead, it would be nice that there's more of a variance, that your clan chooses whatever biome and then the gear is crafted as an offshoot of the materials that you gather there. There were a few remarks to worm tinctures in which he basically said the same thing as before, that they're being totally reworked and a stat cap is being introduced. I completely agree with this, and seeing as they're currently just too powerful, they'll need to be adding a slider where they can adjust however they need fit for the meta. There were also quite a few questions regarding the PvP aspects of the game, including most specifically a flagging system where you can opt in and out of PvP. He emphasized that there will be absolutely no flagging system introduced, and PvP will always be available. Furthermore, that the game itself isn't becoming a PvE game, just that they're focused on PvE content to feed into the PvP mechanics. I also can't agree more with this sentiment. The PvP focus of the game is really something that's brought on by the players and is, in essence, the content created naturally by players who are competing with one another. The PvE side of things just gives us that reason and that goal to do so. You don't just wander out onto the desert randomly to fight another big walker that's fully geared for war. You sneak up on the enemy and surprise attack them when you have an advantage. The PvE is really just the catalyst for doing so and comes from something like a rare boss that you're fighting over to get the kill. Honestly, I think the Worm did a great job of doing that, and we just need more content like that to make the guilds compete with one another as often as they can. I'm personally still waiting for a King of the Hill type system that they can introduce, where players have to maintain control of a specific area and actually stay in the circle for an allotted amount of time to win a reward. He also touches on as well about the solo aspects of LO. I'm personally elated that they're looking at the solo experience itself. A while ago, I thought I would load into the official servers and play on the single player ones, and to be quite honest, it was the most boring time I've ever had in the game. I recorded hours of footage grinding my way through the different tiers and killing Rupus, and honestly, after going through all the footage itself, I realized there was nothing significant happening and nothing entertaining the entire way through. I think that they look at some cool iconic ways and events to mark your progression as a character, they'll have the incentive for a solo player to keep playing the game. Keep in mind that I usually do play with large groups and clans, as I really like the all-out war and large-scale battles that take place in LO, but I think it's still very necessary for there to be a healthy solo and small group population of players to keep the game alive and to more or less be the citizens of the game that drive the trade economy and the need to have ownership of tiles and gain taxes. And of course, the ability to interact with different groups peacefully or aggressively, depending on your clan and their reputation throughout the world. For the beta branch, he does mention that they will be doing an update beforehand, and currently they're doing some closed beta tests for everything on their own private server. For quality, he also mentions that there's going to be a rework for those resources. I'm happy about this personally, as I think for the most part, quality farming was one of the most boring activities you could do. You essentially had to have a place where you would return to once per day to get your quality 100 bone or wood, and it was something that was essentially a requirement for competitive walker fights, but then was also completely controlled by larger clans and boxed in with stone buildings. It'll be interesting to see how exactly they adjust it. For stone bases, he did have a response to the change to them, in which there's essentially a full rework for all siege mechanics. I'd like to see with bases in particular a new requirement to have your resources on the map, but in a way where they're accessible. I've always thought that a core aspect of the game should be carrying your base around with you so that you as a clan have to fight to protect it. It is a very difficult balance to keep because you don't want to risk losing absolutely everything and quitting the game, but at the same time you need to be carrying something that's valuable enough that it's worth defending or worth attacking as a player. In my experience, players are very good at avoiding losing things, so the game needs some kind of incentive for that risk versus reward in some way. Stone bases were great for giving players a false sense of security and leaving mountains of resources on the map, but they were terrible for being easily gamified and abused in so many different circumstances. In response to modules, he also mentioned that there's going to be some significant changes there as well. For the most part, it's pretty straightforward with balancing, but I think a big thing to keep in mind here is that they're adjusting the values to make them all less broken, which is a good thing. This is really just a sliding scale that they need to change, so I don't think it's a stretch to say that they're going to balance them in any negative way. I think my only wish for the module changes is to make them necessary for the one walker that you're using. I absolutely hate the idea that you need a 100 quality spider or firefly walker to respawn on just to get a buff and then pack it away again anyways. This is also the same for crafting module walkers, where you basically build an enclosed area with a stiletto or dinghy that doesn't have any legs so you can just speed things up. It definitely shows the ingenuity of players by all means, but it's not fun and just a bunch of extra work and steps for what is a necessary convenience. Another wingsuit nerf was mentioned by a player, and in response he said that it should nerf your carry weight, to which he mentioned that they do have a mechanic to add or subtract carry weight from your character based on the gear you're wearing. I think that's a great change given the nature of the wingsuit itself, but we would of course need to address life force modules and weight potions, which increase that limit as well. The wingsuit should be used exclusively for scouting and boarding enemy walkers in my opinion, and anything further like the transport of resources or farming the iron tile nodes really undermines some of the core gameplay mechanics. I should also mention for walker builds themselves that there's going to be a lot of different changes to the walkers. I think the biggest takeaway here is that they're rebalancing the size and quote class of the walker. This to me means that they're looking to change up walkers and add a piece limit to them to incorporate their size and effectiveness into the mix. Now, this is clearly speculative, of course, but my assumption is that they'll be reducing the number of siege weaponry that you can have on the walker. This means, for instance, a dinghy might only be able to carry a maximum limit of 1 ballista, whereas a Titan walker could carry 50 offensive weapons. This would make sense from a balance standpoint and change up the fights on walkers immensely if it meant that you had a limited number of gun pods to outfit on one side, as opposed to the full 360-degree coverage wherever they'll fit on current walkers. Hopefully, they stop ballistas from being built on the ground as well and make it so that it actually has to be built on some sort of platform. He does also mention that speed could end up being a factor for walkers as well, which we'll have to see exactly what he means, but it does have me kind of worried, as I think speed has always been the #1 concern for whatever you're using, hence the abundance of Fargo walkers used as rammers and dinghy walkers with torque modules. So it'll be interesting to see how they implement it as a way to balance speed and to become the secondary factor for why you use a walker, rather than the first primary one. That being said, for Raptor walkers, disappointingly, he mentions that they will still be in the game, but at the very least, it's good that they're not introducing anything further for Sky content. As I've said before, they're bad for the game and ruin so much of what makes the game fun and challenging in the first place. We need people to have to slog through the oasis. We can't have them just fly over top of everything like it's no big deal. Another change is to the proxy walkers, which is some exciting news as well. He said that they will have a dev blog on it, but I am genuinely hoping they've reworked them to become more of a mobile base of some kind. I think it would be fantastic to have them actually roam around on the map, either passively or guided by a player, and to make them something you continually have to defend. They could even have an alarm system where they tell players when it's under attack, and they could incorporate all manner of making it a roaming PvP objective of some kind. I think there's a lot of fun and cool features that they could add with the changes to it. Lastly, he does mention that they've done some performance updates and have somewhat looked into increasing the number of players allowed on a tile. I think for the most part they've done as much as they could to handle the networking capacity for players, and at this point something a bit bigger like 150 players would be nice. Some other features for the server-to-server communication would be nice as well, but I don't know how much they can actually go about doing that. So that's basically everything Neon spoke about and addressed for now on Discord. I think it's pretty great to see so far that they're starting to communicate again, and there's a whole lot of stuff I'm very excited about for the next iteration of LO. I don't want to get too hyped, seeing as we're still probably months away, but so far it's looking like it's something that's going to build on the previous iterations of the game. I can't wait to see what kind of info they give us on the mob and AI updates that they're going to have come out with the next blog dev post next week. I'll make sure to make a video on that one, as well as the future ones coming out as well. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.